Hi, this is Josh with Resort TV 1, and today we're going to be talking about how to visit Disney World during the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope you enjoy the video. Please remember to leave us a like and a comment, as well as subscribe and hit that notification bell if you haven't already done so. Also, be sure to follow us on social media. We're Resort TV 1 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So let's get started with the video. And this is something I've wanted to make for a long time. A lot of people have asked us on streams, on social media, and elsewhere, what are your best tips and tricks for visiting Disney World during this extraordinary time that we're living in? And so we've talked about that on the live stream some, and we've discussed it on some of our vlogs, but I wanted to put it together in one easy to use, easy to follow video. So I've typed out all of my thoughts, and I want to share them in as logical of an order as I can, just about, again, all the things that you need to know to visit Disney World during this time, because it's not like your regular Disney vacation, and I think that's where we'll start. There are a lot of things that are very, very different when you go to the parks now, and you've probably read and heard a lot of those things, but I kind of want to put everything together in one place, as I said. So, first of all, as you probably already know, there are no fireworks and no parades. There are the character cavalcades, those are a little bit smaller, but there are no regular parades like the Festival of Fantasy parade or anything like that going on, and no nightly fireworks at any of the parks. So that is a huge change, and of course that is due to the social distancing that would be very difficult during those large-scale events where Disney typically has large crowds of people close together, at least in the past when we weren't having to worry about the social distancing. So no fireworks, no regular parades. Also, most live shows are not operating, so the Frozen Sing-Along, The Little Mermaid, all those kinds of things, Beauty and the Beast, any of those live action shows that have actors going around, the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular, not operating right now. They do have plans to bring some of those back slowly, and I've heard that Little Mermaid, they're starting to think about bringing that back, but as of now, there aren't really any live shows operating at this time. And the other thing that you'll notice is there are several restaurants and shops around Walt Disney World that are closed, especially in the World Showcase area in Epcot. So you'll notice, like for instance, just off the top of my head, in Japan, the Nine Dragons restaurant is closed. They have opened up the main shop there in China, but some of the other things around World Showcase, also the fish and chips, Yorkshire fish and chips there in the UK is closed, and just several other places. So it's not quite like your regular Disney vacation where you can go to all the shops and restaurants that you're used to going to. So just kind of be prepared. You can look online. Some of those will be listed there, but a lot of things are closed, and that's really due to just having enough staffing and things like that to operate those particular places. And the other thing, speaking of staffing, is that park hours are short. In fact, right now that it's after Labor Day, Epcot is actually only open for 8 hours, and that is the shortest operating time that I can remember since we've been going to Disney World. Hours may have been short in 2001 after 9/11. I think they cut them pretty short then too. But right now, Epcot's only open from 11 to 7, so only 8 hours. The other parks are only open for 9 hours. I believe Animal Kingdom's also 8 hours. So right now the hours are, and these could change it at any time, but again, like I said, Epcot from 11 to 7. Animal Kingdom is from 8 to 5. And then Magic Kingdom is from 9 to 6. And then you've got Hollywood Studios, which is running from 10 to 7. So those are all, both Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios are 7 hours, or 9 hours, and Epcot and Animal Kingdom are 8 hours. So the hours are definitely much shorter. Also, water parks are closed. That's a big one, and it is very difficult to social distance, and of course you can't wear a mask when you're in the water. So even though Universal has opened Volcano Bay, Disney has opted to take the safe route there and keep the water parks closed. So definitely no visits to Typhoon Lagoon or Blizzard Beach while you're at Walt Disney World. And of course, you've heard there are no holiday parties or any of the normal holiday festivities. They are going to do decorations, but like they're not doing the gingerbread house at the Grand Floridian at Christmas and just things like that. And another really, really big one is no park hopping. You have to make reservations, which we'll talk about in a bit, but then you have to stay at that same park where you started your day. So definitely no park hopping back and forth. You can't go take the monorail from Epcot to Magic Kingdom. So we're hoping that comes back at a later date. But as of right now, just to control capacity in each park, they're not allowing guests to shift around from park to park. Now, having said that, there are some benefits of coming now. We talked about some of the things that are different and maybe would be negatives to this extraordinary time we're living in. But actually, one of the benefits and the hugest benefits of coming now is that you've got lower crowds. The crowds are increasing kind of by the day actually, but it's still way below what you're used to seeing, and capacity is set way below what you're used to seeing in a regular Disney park day. So in fact, right after things opened up in July, we were looking at like the max line in Magic Kingdom was 25 minutes for Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which is really unheard of for any regular time of the year or anything like that. So now things are a little bit busier, but still, again, way, way, way below where things were before. And what you'll notice really from that is that the walkways are much less crowded. It's much more pleasant to walk around. Yes, the lines for the rides are starting to get longer now, but the walkways are much less crowded. You can get better pictures of your family on Main Street or any other place in any of the other parks. So that's a really, really big benefit to coming right now. Also, there's no fast pass, and that could be a positive or negative depending on your viewpoint. It's kind of nice actually to not have to have everything planned out, and you can just try to get the most popular rides done in the morning and in the late evening as much as you can, and not have to worry about being slowed down a little bit by fast passes that you weren't able to get. So that's kind of a benefit depending on how you think about it. And then there are also some unique offerings like these character cavalcades. They've got the characters on the train station on Main Street USA at different times, and there's a lot of different character meet and greets going on throughout the park. So there are some things that are unique during this special time, but definitely, things are different. I think that's the biggest takeaway here. All right, so those are kind of some of the things that are different, some of the maybe negative things and some of the positive things, but let's talk about a few other things to consider even before you go. First of all, the biggest one is masks. A lot of people have talked about masks and whether they should or shouldn't be there. That's not something we're going to discuss on this video, but Disney is requiring the masks, and so that is something that's happening. And so you definitely want to be prepared for that. I'm sure you've already heard that, but definitely one of the things I wanted to kind of make sure I emphasized is that masks are not optional. Don't plan to come and have yours off or not wear it properly. Don't plan to come and have it below your nose or think, oh, I'm just going to eat or drink the whole time and I won't wear it. They are enforcing the rules, and definitely they will be making sure that everybody has those masks on. So definitely be prepared to wear it the majority of the time. Having said that, also, if you have kids, have your kids practice wearing them around the neighborhood. Maybe do some walks around your neighborhood or just anywhere in your town where they could wear it out in the heat, out in the elements, humidity, things like that. Because it's way different wearing a mask in the humidity and in the heat than it is in the air conditioning. So if they've just been wearing it to stores and things like that, definitely have them wear it outside while you're walking around and just have them get used to it. Another big important consideration is that if you have children with special needs, be sure to consider how they will do with the mask and have them especially practice wearing it, see how they do with it, make sure that it doesn't bother them too much, and things like that is really important, especially if you have those children with special needs, to make sure that they're 100% comfortable with what's going on. And definitely Disney is enforcing the mask rule for everyone, so there's really no exemptions for anybody. And so that is something to consider when you're planning your trip down here if you have any family members or children with special needs. As far as masks go, I prefer the surgical, the paper style masks, because they're more breathable than many of the cloth masks, so that's just something to think about as well. I would bring several different types of masks, and that way you have some options. That's another thing. Definitely bring more than one mask to the parks each day. Obviously, masks break. If you got the paper mask, they do break sometimes, or if they get wet on one of the water rides, or just anything can happen. They can just get kind of dirty, and you want to change them if it's a hot day or something like that. So definitely make sure that you bring extra masks. I usually have 4 or 5, 6 or 7 extra masks in my bag at all times. Another thing to remember is that gaiters, the neck gaiters that go around the neck and up over the nose and mouth that are just a single layer of fabric, those are not allowed at Walt Disney World. They were for just a very short amount of time. The very first couple days, they kind of let them go, but very quickly they said that those are not allowed anymore. Also, any masks with exhalation valves are not allowed. So even if it's an N95, like I actually had an N95, way before all this started, that I used for cleaning out the garage one time, and some things I was doing there, and it had an exhalation valve, and I would not be allowed to wear that at Disney. So just because it doesn't protect others from what you're exhaling. So just keep that in mind. If it's got any kind of a valve on it, they're not going to allow it. They won't let you through security with that. So that's something important to think about. So moving on to some other important topics. When you're planning your trip, a Disney resort stay is almost essential at this time, and the reason is because of the park reservations. It's much easier for resort guests to make park reservations, and you can make them for your entire stay when you're a resort guest. Resort guests get first pick on the reservations, and they have that top priority. So if you really want to visit the harder to get into parks like Hollywood Studios, you really need to have a resort stay in order to do that. Now you can get park reservations with just purchasing theme park tickets if you stay off property. That does work and it can be done, but having that Disney resort stay really does help during this time especially. And so, speaking of the park reservation system just a little bit, you do have to go online to do that. You can do it on a phone. It's a little bit easier on a desktop or laptop computer though. And basically what you'll do is you'll log into your My Disney Experience account and it'll take you through, you'll select your party and you'll be able to make your reservations for the parks that you'd like to visit. You can click on a date and click on a park and see if it's available. They also have a calendar available online that you can check and see what reservations are available for which type of guests. You've got 3 different categories. You've got resort guests, you've got theme park ticket guests, and then you've also got annual pass holders. Now, if you are an annual pass holder like I am and you're using just your pass to get into the parks and you're staying off-site, you have to be really, really mindful of the fact that you can only make 3 days of reservations at a time, and after that you're not guaranteed anything. And a lot of times annual pass holders have trouble getting into the most popular parks. It is getting better. Disney is expanding capacity for annual pass holders, but there are a lot of times that we just have to take whatever park is open due to capacity issues, especially at Hollywood Studios, as well as sometimes Magic Kingdom. So just keep that in mind if you're an annual pass holder. It's better to have that resort stay so that you are guaranteed to have first pick on the park reservations. Now keep in mind, resort guests are not guaranteed a park reservation. They're just guaranteed first pick. However, I haven't seen very many times. I think Labor Day weekend was the only time I've seen that park resort guests actually had some days that were not available around that Labor Day weekend. So that's something to consider as well. Another thing about park reservations, if you are an annual pass holder and you're trying to get reservations, if you just keep checking, it's kind of like fast passes used to be. You just keep checking the app kind of over and over and over again. Sometimes park reservations do come up. You just have to keep checking. If somebody changes theirs or somebody cancels one, you can sometimes get a last minute park reservation. And you can even get park reservations on the same day sometimes. If you are staying here, say you're here with a friend, you're staying with somebody that lives locally and you're just going for part of a day, you actually can check the same day. Usually after 2 or 3 p.m. in the afternoon, they'll have some things available and you can go for just part of a day. But that's really would be only for annual pass holders. Obviously, you wouldn't want to pay full price for a ticket and then only go part of a day. And again, remember, there's no park hopping, so when you plan your day, you can't say, okay, we're going to start the morning at Magic Kingdom, then head to Epcot. Unfortunately, that isn't allowed anymore, so that is something to consider as well. Also, another thing about the resorts to consider is that bus transportation is not quite as frequent. It's still pretty good, but it's not quite as frequent as it was before the pandemic. So definitely, if you're able to have a vehicle on property, it might be really helpful to drive your vehicle to the parks if that's at all possible for you to do that. Another thing is too, because transportation doesn't run as frequently, also because transportation closes earlier. The monorail closes earlier, as well as the Skyliner, and the buses don't run as late either. So if you need to get around after those things are closed, a car is really, really important. And also, you could of course take a Lyft or an Uber. Minivan service is not being offered right now, but you could take one of those ride-sharing services if you're comfortable with that. So those are a few other things to consider as you're planning. Of course, talking about buses again, social distancing on the buses is pretty good, but keep in mind you'll still be riding with several other people. So if you're not comfortable with that, you definitely want to have your own form of transportation available when you're going to the parks. Having said that, other transportation is pretty good. Monorails, they really space people out. They only put 2 families per car, so you can distance all the way across each monorail cabin. So instead of being like 6 feet apart, you're actually like 10 or 12 feet apart. So that makes it really, really nice. They also leave the doors open for a little bit longer, it seems like, so that the air can circulate on the monorails. As far as ferry boats, they have little dots where your party can stand. A lot of the benches are marked off. They don't want people sitting on, but ferry boats are nice as well. But Skyliners, they only do one family per vehicle. So those are kind of some of the ways that they've dealt with social distancing on transportation. But again, keep in mind it doesn't last as long or doesn't run as long as what it normally would have in the past. And again, as I mentioned earlier, park hours are very short. So you're going to want to spend the whole day in the park, really just to get your money's worth and to get your, value out of the vacation. Before, if things were open at 9 and closed at 10 or 11 p.m., you could go a little bit later if you wanted to sleep in, or you could go early, go back to the resort, hang out for a little while, go to the pool, and then come back and finish the evening in the parks. I know a lot of people do that and really have a lot of success and a lot of relaxation and a lot of fun with that particular plan, but that doesn't work now since parks are only open 8 to 9 hours. So be sure to arrive about an hour before the park opens so that you can get into the park when it opens. Another little tip or a little secret is that the parks actually start running rides before the official opening time. Not very much, but a few minutes before. A lot of times you'll see rides open anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes before the official park opening time, depending on when they decide to let guests in on that day. And usually the parking gates open about an hour before the official park opening time. So if you come like 10 minutes before the park opens, you're definitely not going to make it into the park by the time it opens, and you're probably going to lose about a half an hour of your park time just going through security, or if you are driving your car, parking, going through temperature check, all those different things that you have to do now. Security can take a little bit longer just because there are new procedures in place, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But just be sure to arrive a little bit early and plan to spend the whole day in the park to really get your value out of the vacation, as I said. Speaking of temperature check earlier, don't worry. Sometimes if you're in the parking lot and you're out in the hot Florida sun, you can get a little bit overheated, and then they'll check your temperature and you'll be over. And then they'll take you to a cooling tent, and they'll wait a minute or two and they'll check you again. I've had that happen to me a couple times where, either I didn't have a chance to cool down the car when I was driving one place to the next, and, I was a little bit too overheated from walking in the parking lot, and I waited like a minute or two. They checked me again and I was fine. So don't get too worried or upset if you test a little bit over temperature at first. They will allow you that time to cool down. There's a fan in there and you can really get some time to cool down before they retake your temperature. Now, as far as security goes, there are some different procedures, and I don't want to go too far in depth on this just to maintain the security of everything, but basically what they're doing, instead of checking through everybody's bag, they're actually just asking you to take out all large metal objects like metal water bottles, metal sunscreen, and especially umbrellas that might easily set off the metal detectors. Another thing to consider taking out of your backpack would be any large cell phone batteries, or any other medium to large metal objects. Those would go in the bin on the table, and then your entire bag goes with you through the metal detector. Just kind of be aware that's kind of what's going on, and just be prepared to take out some of those metal objects pretty quickly so you can get through security as fast as possible and get to having fun in the park. So when you're in the park, remember there are no fast passes, so plan to do the more popular attractions first thing in the morning or towards the end of the day. Try to get as many rides done in the morning as you can. That's really going to be helpful and important with the reduced hours in the parks. I would recommend eating lunch around 11 or 11:30 if possible to avoid the lunch rush. And speaking of eating, most food ordering is mobile now, so they're pretty much requiring you to do mobile. They do have a couple cash registers open, and you can do some on-site ordering, but you kind of have to ask where that is, and if the restaurant's too busy, they might make you wait a little bit longer to do that. So definitely check your My Disney Experience app, make sure it's working before you come. Try and have a credit card or debit card attached to your account, and that way you can be ready to go when it's time for lunch, and you're not trying to figure all that out while your family is hungry. So that might not be a good experience if that happens. They also have mobile ordering time windows now, almost like fast pass return windows. And a lot of times if you go early, like 11 or 11:30, it'll say like now through 11:30 or now through noon or something like that. But when the restaurant starts to get busy, you might have to wait 20 to 30 minutes before they'll even let you place your order. Or they'll let you place it, but they won't let you say, I'm here, I'm ready, prepare my order. So just because they're trying to make sure that they don't get too many people into the restaurant where, their outdoor seating and their indoor seating might get overwhelmed if people all try and eat at the same time. So that does help them control capacity in the restaurants, but that's why I recommend eating early. Do as many rides as you can right off the bat. go eat, and then while everybody else is eating, you can go do a few more rides. But just remember, a lot of people eat at noon or 1 or even 2 o'clock. So those hours really are busy at the counter service restaurants. Another thing that's really cool about the mobile app that has just been added is that you can attach gift cards to your account for mobile ordering. So that's something you couldn't do in the past. If you wanted to use a Disney gift card, you actually had to go in to the restaurant and use the cash register to order. But now you can do that on the My Disney Experience app. So that's really, really helpful. Now, as far as going through queues and getting on rides, just remember to observe all social distancing markers. You'll kind of have to get used to not queuing up quite as close to others as you have in the past. And you just have to look at the markers and kind of see where they are. Some of them are really, really far apart from others, and some of them might be around a corner. Some of them you're like, okay, that's way more than 6 feet. But if you kind of keep in mind the left to right distancing as well as the front to back distancing, you'll realize why Disney laid out the markers the way that they did. So definitely just kind of get used to following those markers and trying to keep your family as close to those markers as possible so that you're staying distanced from everybody. As far as waiting in lines, though, wait times are not as accurate as they used to be just because of the social distancing and the cleaning procedures. And these wait times can change pretty quickly due to those cleaning procedures that I just mentioned. Sometimes the cleaning procedures can take up to 20 minutes on certain rides, depending on how long it takes to cycle all the vehicles through. Because what they'll do is they'll clean all of the ride vehicles at the same time, and they'll cycle all of them through one time with no guests on them to make sure that their disinfectant has dried before they put anybody back on the rides. So for a ride like Pirates of the Caribbean that's a fairly long ride and has a lot of boats, that does take 20 to 25 minutes. So even if you go up to Pirates and you see, oh, it's 15 minutes, that's awesome, let's go ride it. We've actually had this happen before on a live stream. We thought we were going to get right onto the ride pretty quick. And it turned out that they said, oh, we just started our cleaning procedures. Sorry, it's going to be about 20 to 25 minutes. So that is something to consider. And you have to kind of make up your mind whether you want to just stay in the line or whether you want to come back later. Keep in mind that the next ride you go to could also be doing cleaning procedures as well. So it's good that they're doing it. It's just something to get used to since wait times may not be accurate as much as possible due to these cleaning procedures. However, I have noticed most wait times are shorter than they're posted just because they have accounted for the cleaning time. It really is a little bit hit or miss sometimes. So just be prepared to be flexible about the wait times and just kind of make the best decisions you can. And just remember that things aren't normal. This is an extraordinary time. And so you might end up waiting longer or shorter for different attractions. And, just remember not to get too frustrated and just have a good time and enjoy being there because it is a little bit different. So at Hollywood Studios, if you want a Rise of the Resistance virtual queue group, is what they're calling them instead of boarding groups now, they're given out at 10 a.m. when the park opens and also again at 2 p.m. However, I would always try to get them first at 10 a.m. if possible because there are times when the ride is not operating very well on a certain day and they have to shut down multiple times that they don't get through very many boarding groups. And so sometimes you can't even get a boarding group at 2 p.m. if the ride's been shut down most of the morning so far. Or if you're not fast enough at that 2 p.m. time, they go pretty quick. So I would recommend getting to the park early and still trying to get it at that first time. Now, you still can only get one. So if you go and ride at 10 or 11 o'clock, that's it. You're done for the day, which is good because we want to give as many people as possible a chance to ride this amazing attraction. But remember, at Hollywood Studios, it's really important since the park opens at 10. You want to be, at the parking gate or at the resort bus stop around 9 or even a little bit before so that you can be in the park before 10 o'clock. Remember, if you're running in the park at 9:59 or at 10:01, you're not going to be able to get a boarding group because you have to log on to that My Disney Experience app right at 10 o'clock on the dot, like with the second hand at 10 o'clock and 0 seconds. You have to be right on it because they're gone within just a few seconds of 10 o'clock. So you want to be very, very fast with that. Another thing to think about is Hollywood Studios rides get really busy really quickly. And so if you're running at 10 o'clock to try and get on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway or Slinky Dog Dash or maybe Smuggler's Run, some of the more popular attractions there at Hollywood Studios, just remember if you're in a place with not very good cell service or Wi-Fi, or if you're like on Slinky Dog Dash, I've actually heard stories of people getting the boarding group while they're literally riding a roller coaster. That's really cool if you can do that, but just keep in mind you don't want to ruin your day and not be able to ride Rise of the Resistance at all if you're kind of in a place with bad service. There's places in Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway that don't have very good service or even Wi-Fi. So just kind of figure that out ahead of time and plan ahead for where you might be at 10 o'clock so that you can maybe be close to an attraction or be at the front of the queue for an attraction while you're trying to get that boarding group. And also, another really, really important thing to think about when you're in the park, sometimes it does get pretty tedious to wear the mask for long periods of time. So they do have these relaxation zones in each park, about 2 to 3 per park. You can take your mask off, you can just relax, you can eat, whatever you want to do, and just sit there and get some fresh air for a little while. So I do recommend using those as much as you need to. There are mostly outdoor ones. There is one indoor one at Magic Kingdom and Storybook Circus. I would recommend using the outdoor ones just because the ventilation is better, and I do feel a little bit safer there. So definitely use those relaxation zones, and also remember that when you're eating, of course, lunch and dinner, you can take your mask off as well. So maybe put a break in the mid-afternoon. You eat lunch, take a break maybe sometime around 3 o'clock, let your mask, keep it off for about 15 minutes, get some good fresh air, and then go back at it. Especially that first day or two while you're still getting used to wearing the mask for long periods of time. Depending on if you're used to wearing it at your job or if your kids are used to wearing it at school, it may take some getting used to if you haven't done that much. Also, speaking of eating, I recommend actually eating outside whenever possible, but this is up to your family's level of comfort. I just like eating outside because I feel like the ventilation is better, and so I do feel safer doing that. But again, like with everything on this list I'm talking about, these are general guidelines and things to consider, but it's really up to what your family wants to do and how you feel comfortable. So if you feel comfortable eating inside or you really just need to cool down, just kind of look at your surroundings and make sure that you are far enough away from the other tables around you. So that's really, really important. Disney's done a pretty good job spacing things out, but remember, things can get moved throughout the day. Cast members might not notice, so just kind of be aware of where other guests are sitting and find a place where you feel adequately socially distanced. There are character cavalcades happening in every park, as I mentioned before, and they're a lot of fun. They're very short, so people don't get gathered up as much, but just be on the lookout as you're walking around. The characters do a great job interacting with kids, and so one of the nice things about it is you don't have to spend a lot of time waiting on a character meet and greet. You can still see them as they're coming down the street, and it's a lot less stress and a lot less hassle than waiting in the long character meet and greet lines. Now, they don't announce the times for those, but it's generally every 15 to 30 minutes, especially in the main areas of the park, like on Main Street USA, in the Magic Kingdom, on Hollywood Boulevard, and then around World Showcase at Epcot. At Animal Kingdom, they actually have the character cavalcades in the rivers that go around the Rivers of Light area. They have characters on boats that go through some of those canals in that area and around the river waterway that goes down through Dinoland as well. So they're really, really neat. And even on the train station at Magic Kingdom, they actually have Mickey and friends up there every 15 to 30 minutes or something like that. And the characters will wave at you. You can kind of take like a distance selfie with them. So it's a lot of fun. It is disappointing to not have the parades, but they are doing something to still give guests that magical experience of seeing their favorite characters. Now, having said that, remember that there are no regular character meet and greets. So you can't go and hug Mickey Mouse, unfortunately, of course, due to safety issues. You can't meet your favorite Disney princess close up. You can see a lot of the princesses riding through some of the cavalcades, but there aren't regular meet and greets. So definitely prepare your kids for that if they think that they're going to see their favorite princess or see Mickey Mouse and get to give him a hug. Just let people know, let the kids know that, hey, during this trip, we're not going to be able to do that, just so their expectations are set and they're not disappointed when that doesn't happen. Another thing to consider is that rides with pre-shows are being done without pre-shows to aid in social distancing. So you're not going to see the Haunted Mansion stretch room. You're not going to see the dinosaur pre-show film, just things like that. Now, some pre-shows they are doing. They are doing the Rise of the Resistance pre-shows with Rey, as well as the pre-show on the ship where you end up on the Star Destroyer in the hangar. So those are being done. Also, the one on Flight of Passage is being done as well. So it just kind of hit or miss, but be prepared to walk through a lot of those pre-shows. It is a little bit disappointing, but it's still nice to be able to ride those rides anyway. And another tip to maximize your time in the parks is that since those park hours are so short, I would do most of your shopping after the regular park close, since a lot of the main shops don't close for an hour after the official park closing time. So for instance, if you want to go to the Emporium on Main Street USA, it usually stays open for an additional hour. So if Magic Kingdom closes at 6, it'll be open till around 7. Obviously, you want to go right after the park close. You don't want to be too late because they do start closing the doors within, between 45 minutes and an hour after park close. But if you have something in mind you want to grab at one of the shops on the way out, definitely keep in mind that you can do that a few minutes after the park closing and save your time for rides when the park is officially open. Now, after the park closes, remember everyone is leaving the parks early every day now. So the resorts are actually very crowded in the evenings, especially around 7 to 8 p.m. And we saw this on one of our live streams when we visited Pop Century, which is a large resort with a lot of guests staying there. Resort food courts can get very, very crowded during this time, especially at the larger resorts. So remember, you can have your food delivered to your room if you don't want to be in these crowds, and you can go back and just enjoy some relaxing time in your room. Also remember, the resort pools are super busy in the evenings as well, because people want to be at the parks during the limited park opening time. So it's kind of forced people to follow the same schedule because of the limited hours. And also keep in mind that playgrounds are closed, so let kids know that ahead of time as well, that they won't be able to go if they've got a favorite playground. Like Liam loves the Animal Kingdom Lodge playground. They won't be able to go and do that at this time. So those are some things to think about with resorts. Really, my advice would be, if things are looking too crowded in the food court area or the resort shop or any of those things in the main building of the resort, be a good opportunity to, again, order that food, have it delivered to the resort room, relax in your room, then maybe go out and take a walk around the less crowded areas of the resort. Most resorts have great walking paths and trails. You can still get away from people off the beaten path, and so that would be a great way to kind of walk off some some energy at the end of the night if you want to do that, and then get to bed early and be ready for the next morning so that you can be there right when the park opens. So it's a little bit different schedule. I know a lot of people on vacation, they want to stay up a little later and then they want to get up a little later. It's just a little bit harder to do that right now with the way things are in the parks. Also, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but resort transportation closes within an hour or an hour and a half after park close. So monorail resort hopping and Skyliner resort hopping can't be done for much time after the parks close. You can do it during the day, and you can also do it, up until that park close. But then when the parks start to close, they start to ask you, where are you going? You need to start getting where you're going so that you don't get stranded somewhere and end up having to call for a ride-sharing service. Having said that, Disney is pretty good about helping people get to where they're going. They might, direct you to a bus after the Skyliner or monorail shuts down, but really, you don't want to be caught in that situation where you're having to ask for help to get back to your resort if you don't have a car available. So just keep in mind that transportation does close much earlier than what you might think. And finally, let's talk about Disney Springs for a minute. Disney Springs gets very, very crowded on Friday and Saturday night. In fact, it almost gets as crowded as it would have been before the closure. It was very popular on Saturday and Friday nights for the locals, and so you definitely want to be prepared for much bigger crowds there. Also, mask compliance seems to be a little bit lower on Friday and Saturday just because there aren't enough cast members for the bigger amount of guests that are there at Disney Springs at that time. So you can still go on a Friday or Saturday. We did this past Friday, but I just recommend really being careful about where you are, maybe trying to stay in less crowded areas, and just paying attention to your surroundings and being aware that if you don't want to be in those crowds, you definitely want to go at a different time. Disney Springs in the morning is really, really nice if you've got like a non-park day built in. A lot of people have non-park days built in on their travel days. So say you maybe get in early afternoon, you could go over there. Or if it's maybe a Wednesday evening, it wouldn't be as bad as a Friday evening. So just keep that in mind. But if you do have a morning to go to Disney Springs, maybe you have a flight that leaves in the afternoon, so you didn't want to do a park day, but you had some time in the morning, Disney Springs is open about an hour before the shops open. So the shops open at 10. You can get in there about 9 to just start walking around. And it's so pleasant to walk around with hardly anybody there. So just keep that in mind as an option to go at a different time so you're not there when it's super, super crowded. Also remember that at Disney Springs, some of the shops have capacity limits, so be prepared for small waits to go into some of the smaller shops. And that's true, of course, at some of the park shops as well. If you've got those smaller capacity shops, they do start to count capacity and have you wait in a queue outside until there's enough room for people to go in. Well, that's about all the tips I had for this video. If you have any other tips or tricks that you'd like to share or any other information that I left out, please feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll include it in the next update. Also, if you've been to Disney World since the reopening, definitely be sure to leave a comment and let me know how your experience was and if you tried any of these strategies when you were here and how it worked for you. So definitely leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Also, again, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you haven't already done so. And follow us on social media. We're Resort TV 1 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And finally, please be sure to check out our sponsors, MickeyBlog.com and MickeyTravels.com for the best and free Disney vacation planning advice. Go check out MickeyTravels.com to book your next trip to Disney. It doesn't cost any more than a regular Disney vacation. Also, be sure to check out Victor Naraki if you're thinking about moving to Central Florida. Victor is a realtor who specializes in moving people to the Central Florida Walt Disney World area. You can find him at celebratingflorida.com or facebook.com/Naraki Realtor, and also tell him that Resort TV 1 sent you. Thanks for watching, everybody. So for now, have a great big beautiful tomorrow. Bye-bye. Now that you've finished watching this video, be sure that you're subscribed so that you can get all of the latest updates. Also, check out some other great videos on our channel. Have a great big beautiful tomorrow. Bye-bye.